Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylist podcast, where we talk all about interiors, from interviews with interior stylists, writers and the up-and-coming interiors brands we all want to hear about and feature. There's so much to talk about. I'm your host, Emma Morton-Turner. Enjoy the show. Today's guest knows absolutely everything there is to know about colour and paint. She has a phenomenal amount of experience in paint and trend colours, which is why I specifically wanted her to be on the show today. Mainly because I went to a press launch recently and actually was drawn to tears from listening to her conversation and her trend talk. Today's guest is Marianne Shillingford, Creative Director of Dulux. Did I get that right?
You did get that
fantastic.
Right. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much for
having
having me.
I'm so sorry that I reduced you to tears, but I think it was tears of emotion.
Happy tears, yes, very much so. It was the bag of love, as I refer to the gift bag that you gave us. But we'll go into that, I think, in a minute. So, Creative Director of Dulux, rather small job, would you say?
Well, it is a heck of a job. It's one of those nobody ever really described. I mean, I can imagine what a creative director is in an advertising agency or a creative agency, but the creative director of a big paint company is it's an extraordinary job. Every day is different. I don't really know what's going to happen every day. I mean, one of my main roles is as an ambassador of colour. I'm hugely passionate about paint. I'm passionate about the paints that we create and the science and the experts that go into making our paint. So that's an easy part of my job. But then a sort of less easy part of my job might be, for example, yesterday we had the artist Stuart Padwick in, and he was creating some pieces of furniture for the Beaux Arts Gallery, and he wanted a specific orange and a specific yellow and a specific red that he wanted just for himself. And so we went and did a colour workshop, and he created those colours. So then I have to match those colours on a master palette, make sure they can be made in different materials, and then so it goes from being an ambassador to being almost a paint technician, and then actually physically doing the mixing and the exploration of what is included in a colour as well. So. And everything in between, meeting decorators, meeting scientists, working with our tech innovators on ideas where paint goes into a whole new area where it doesn't feel like paint anymore. So, we could talk forever about what my job entails.
When you said paint workshop, is that literally going in and working with the paint? Like, what does that entail when you need to find that? Because I was thinking, if someone says, I want a specific yellow, what do you do in the workshop to get that yellow?
It is literally mixing up colours. So you have three primary colours. We have the three primary colours, red, yellow and blue. And I have a specific red, yellow and blue that I love to work with. And then we have Van Dyke brown, which is Van Dyke's colour of dirt, ancient dirt, and then black and white. And from those colours, we should pretty well be able to mix pretty well every colour. You won't
That's phenomenal to know that it's just that small amount can get everything.
Yeah, it's pretty. You don't get the saturation of pigment and the light reflectiveness of all colours, but you generally get to every colour. And in mixing a colour, you get to understand its characteristics. So not just the way that it looks, but the way that it feels and the way that it makes a room feel, the way that it captures an emotion, the way that it can up the energy levels or turn down the visual volume and make things calm and gentle. So making colour by hand is a bit like making bread by hand. It always tastes better, doesn't it?
Yes, always. Yes. I've seen you mix colours, and I've seen you take one colour. So I can't remember what colour you showed us. I was at a trend.
A trend event.
A trend event. Yeah, we were at a trend event, and you were showing us the three primary colours, and then you added Van Dyke to one. You'd made up like an orange colour, and then you added Van Dyke, and it just completely changed the whole look. It made it look very kind of vintagey or Victorian, or just a completely different feel. It was fascinating that one colour can do that.
It's still an orange, so you're still looking at an orange, but what you're looking at is adding a few hundred years of filth on it. So the dirt of smoke and cooking fat and dust, and so it's that Van Dyke seems to sort of it's not very romantic, but Van Dyke brown just added to any colour seems to give it this beautiful heritage,
Yeah,
vintage
heritage is
feel.
the word.
Yeah, it's a heritage. It gives it a provenance that it wouldn't have normally had. Now, you can do a similar thing so if you were wanting to mute a colour down, but make it look less vintage and more modern in a sense, more sort of muted, but in a modern sense, so quieter visually, but very modern, you would add a little black. And black will just kick off the high notes and make it's a bit like adding salt to caramel. You wouldn't think it works, but it creates a modern taste that's delicious, but and it's almost you remember it's not a memory, but it's something that you'll always come back to. Classic combination. But black in colour gives you a modern muted appearance.
It's very clever. It's very the technology behind it.
It's not
brilliant.
so much,
it's fascinating.
It's a kind of formula rather than technology. It's a kind of magic. It's ingredients. It's like cooking. It's like flour, water, butter, milk. It's the simple ingredients of colour. Once you understand what each of their characteristics are, then you can make anything. So you can make anything.
So when this artist said to you, right, I want this specific orange, did he have something to show you, a fabric or something, and you could say, right, I know that I mixed this amount of this, and then do you kind of
even more difficult than that? It was in his head. So
yes, that's what I thought when you first said it.
Which is always difficult when people wanting to describe colour, to being able to describe a colour and the characteristics. People use descriptive words that are very emotional. So you get to the colour by describing it as you're wearing a beautiful pink top, and the pink top for me is a very clean and bright pink top. It's highly light reflective. It's very intensely saturated. So it's a very modern colour, very clean. But I would also imagine I could describe that as fun. It's making me smile. It's an uplifting and energizing colour. So I'm using words that describe colour in such a way that helps you build a picture up.
So anyone listening has an idea of the colour.
Hopefully, yes.
Exactly.
So what Thomas was doing was describing the colour, but actually what I did was I showed him how to mix colours himself. So I always think, teach someone to fish and they feed themselves for life. So I taught him how to mix colours, and he mixed his own colours, and he did a fantastic job. So he found the colour he was thinking of in his head, and then what I could do as a sort of the master chef would just tweak it and add the odd bit of visual seasoning to get it to exactly where he wanted it to go.
It's fascinating stuff. So how did you get into, because I know you as like a colour expert, but you didn't, how did you start? You studied art, didn't you?
I did art, and I love painting and drawing. I love colouring in, and I did art at college, and when I sort of got to the end of it, I realised that I didn't have much to say with painting. I enjoyed the technical aspect of mixing up colours and I love painting itself, but I couldn't say anything emotionally, and I wasn't a fine artist, and so I wanted to go into the more it's the colouring in really, and the sort of theatre of colour, and so I enrolled on a sign writing course. I did sitting guilds, decorating, sign writing, gilding, lining, all of the traditional arts, and then started my own little business. Painting the narrow boats, and then the narrow boats led to weirdly enough, I wanted to buy my beloved Edward, who I'm married to still, met him when I was very young, and I wanted to buy him a Dodgem car because we love the fairground. This is a shaggy dog store. Bear with it, you'll like it. Anyway, so I went heard about this guy who ran a showman's decorating company who painted fairground rides, and he had Dodgem cars. So I went and knocked on his door, opened up the door, and there was this playground, this magical space filled with galloping horses, waltzers, show fronts, more gold and glitter and sparkly stuff than you could ever imagine, and it was heaven, and it smelled beautiful because all the paints then were solvent based and unusual flamboyant enamels which have a specific smell. It's quite sweet, and it was just a magical place, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I want to do. Anyway, couldn't find anybody in the space, and a little voice came out from a corner, and it literally was, help, help, and a waltzer had fallen on top of him, that sort of squashed him a bit, and anyway, but managed to get him out. And anyway, cut a long story short, I told him that I'd done sign writing, and he was looking for an assistant, and literally I started working for him.
So squashed person.
So yes, yes, and so we got a waltzer. My husband was happy, and I got to be a showman's decorator. So from about the age of 20, 21, I worked for him for about 4 or 5 years, and that was the most extraordinary adventure in colour, and colour being theatre, colour being the thing that, on a fairground, it entertains. You've got this amazing visual entertainment, and plus that with craft, which is an amazing craft. And when you're working on fairground stuff, it's repetitive and fast, and you have to turn it out, and you have to be creative. So it was everything I absolutely loved. And the guy I worked for, his name was Pete Tate. He still is Pete Tate, and he is an amazing man. And he mixed colours in such a way that he knew what a colour would look like when it dried, and he knew what a colour would look like when it aged. And he just had this thing, and he taught me. I was pretty good with colour, but after working with a real master, that is something else. And so that kind of, I never really talk about it because it was always a bit naff. Because it wasn't terribly sort of highbrow, was it? But actually, it's stood me in such good stead. And it's a love affair with paint and the theatre and the transformational qualities of paint that has kept me going and happy.
So where did you go from there?
So from there, I started my business, and I went into the fairground stuff and had a little studio in Nottingham, and I started making fairground animals. So that's the kind of thing that I used to make.
There's a pig up. We're in a open plan kitchen kind of living room, and there's a pig who is more than one colour. He's pink and black and blue and red and yellow. Sorry, I hope you can hear me. I'm turning away from the microphone, but he's quite large to be in a kitchen. He's fabulous. So you've got him from like the beginning. How did you come to have him?
No, I made him. So I used to carve them. So I carved them.
You made the pig.
I made the pig. Wow. I made rabbits. I made a
I will have
cat
to take a picture
horses.
if you don't mind, so I can share it in the show notes because you have to see this.
It's something that it just found easy to do. So I carved that out of clay, and then we would cast that. So a lot of the stuff around that time was being sold, the original stuff. And so to capture the original, we would make copies of the originals and we'd cast them up, make them in fiberglass. So that was a thing that I used to do, and I absolutely loved that. So I would do the sign writing, picture work was my thing, mural work. It's a funny old thing, isn't it? I mean, it really is.
I just had no idea you were going to say this.
To carve pigs and horses.
So how did you come to be the creative director of Dulux? How did that come about?
There's so many stories. We could go on for hours and hours. But so from working in the fairground, there was this big thing, changing rooms.
Yes.
And everybody was doing ragging and dragging and bagging, and the thing that I was doing was really high craft, lots of oil-based stuff and really fine gilding and marble work and lining. And I saw the stuff that they were doing on TV, and also met up with a few designers, interior designers, who were making an absolute fortune out of this sort of interior design. And I was working out in cold warehouses and on fairgrounds and loving it, but thinking, I'm poor as a church mouse. This is I love my job, but there's got to be, I want to have kids, I want to have a family, I want to think of some other way of using this skill. And so I started a little decorating company doing interiors, and we took the specialist effects that we'd done in the fairground, got together with a band of amazing people who could do everything from carving to really, really amazing mural work, and then started this little merry band of decorators. And so we did lots of decorating, sort of high-end interiors, domestic stuff, and lots of themed pubs at the time and themed nightclubs, and so that was fantastic. And then we started using a product of Dulux's that was this amazing thing called acrylic scumble glaze, which is a water-based version of an oil-based stinky stuff we had been using. We found this stuff. It allowed us to do techniques 10 times quicker without the smell. We didn't go home stinking of the stuff, and it also wasn't highly flammable, so we wouldn't be let it set
breathing it all in.
No, not breathing it in. We wouldn't set fire to a client's house anymore, thank the Lord. And everything we could do, we changed, we adapted our skills, and we started to do water-based. Now, somebody saw us do this, and Dulux asked me in to show them what I was doing. They were doing little kind of how-to. Back in the day, I mean, this is 25 years ago. So back in the day, they were just little how-to videos or how-to films about how to. And I showed them what we did with their stuff, and then I did a tour for them around the country, showing decorators how to use this wonderful scumble glaze. And since that started the relationship with Dulux. In an ambassadorial role as a paint expert, and I've worked alongside them ever since. that led to spot of TV. So I presented a couple of TV programs, which was great fun, and that kind of led me back to Dulux. So you have this sort of, you build up a tapestry of things, and it's all, everything that's ever happened to me. There is a thread of some sort of talent in there,
but
there's these sort of serendipitous things that happen. Something happens. It usually starts with something going horribly wrong, and then something good happens, and it leads to something else and something else. And I'm always open to what's going to happen next.
You have to be, I believe completely wholeheartedly in that if something goes wrong, one door closes, another door opens every time. You just have to step back and allow it to happen and not fret.
Yeah. And if it goes wrong, and if you don't want to do that or something, you can always move on and move away from something. So the Dulux, the creative director, I helped them set up a design service. Worked on that for about 7 years. Still running my own business at the time, and then suddenly, and I was very poorly for a long time as well. That was I had a sort of a dip in fortune, but that was a wonderful time as well in a weird kind of way, because it helped me rejig what I wanted. But coming out of being poorly, I completely lost my confidence. It's just one of those nutty things. I'd done some wonderful things while I'd been poorly, so I had a rest. But I came out of it and I thought, this is it. I've reached my glass ceiling. I'm the design director of the design service, and I'm now reduced onto a few days a week. And maybe this is it. Maybe this is. I'm happy with this. I work with lovely people. I work for a lovely company. This is it. And then I had an opportunity to go and see the big boss. And I didn't know he was the big boss, and, like you don't. And I was told to be at a certain point, at a certain place, to meet the big boss. Well, I didn't even know I was going to meet the big boss. It was just a meeting. And I turned up, and there happened to be this guy in the room, very charming, lovely. And we got chatting and got on very well. And he said to me, Marianne, he said, what would you do? If you had a chance to make a difference to this company, what would you do? Anyway, that was like
you went for it.
I absolutely went for it. I think there was swearing involved and a lot of passionate banging on the table. And one of the things about our company is it's an iconic British brand. It built on modernity, unashamedly built on technological advances, on modernity. We were the first to design vinyl silk and vinyl matte, and we do the most amazing paints that do extraordinary things. And so I started to tell him, and we keep all of this stuff in the drawer. We don't wear it like a crown. And I have this thing. If we were a technological piece of equipment, we would be an Apple iPhone. We are not a vintage brand. We're not looking to the past. And even though we do all of that stuff, we're actually incredibly, unashamedly modern. Everything we do is modern. And so I was getting very passionate, and I didn't realise he was the boss.
He loved every word.
And anyway, so somebody said, "Would you like to be the creative director?" I mean, what a stupid question. Of course, I would like to be the creative director. And it is seriously the best job. And so I asked myself, is this the glass ceiling? I don't know. I don't know. I quite fancy being the Mary Berry of paint. I think she got there. She's there. Yeah, I want to kind of like keep going, because I think there's a whole generation out there that but probably won't get to enjoy paint the way I have, and colour the way I have. And so maybe there's a place for me as I get older. Who knows?
Well, this leads us on to the trends event that I came to.
Yeah.
So Dulux has a colour of the year, and I came to a press event. We had a lunch, and we sat down, and you talked us through how the colour trends are planned, how you research them, and then you talked about the different kind of areas that each colour trend has.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a bit about, so the colour of the year for Dulux is spiced honey.
Yes. Yeah.
And would you like to explain how you come up with spiced honey?
Okay, the colour of the year is a global thing. So Dulux are part of AkzoNobel. It's a huge global company. We specialise in colour in surface coatings. My bit of it is decorative. But the research that we do is about finding a palette of colours that has a resonance with the whole world, that tells a story of what human beings are doing in the world, how we're living, and how the spaces that we're living in and working in are going to look in the future. It's not the be all and end all, but it is a really strong story that's it's the gathering of information from all of our markets across the world. So we have 80 markets in 26 countries, and each of those markets will be represented in Colour Futures, in the curation of Colour Futures. So what happens every year in November, our aesthetics team in Amsterdam invite experts from all over the world, and these are industry experts in anything from architecture and design and technology, social economics, editors of Elle Decoration, the creative director of Philips, and representing each something that's happening that's really interesting in the world, that's really kind of quite it's something that's happening. It is a thing that's happening in the world. We gather them together and we have a forum, we have a discussion about the state of the world, the state of design, the state of the way that the world looks and the way that the world is functioning, and as human beings are getting to grips with that. And this information is distilled into stories. We find a single thread that connects these stories together, and the stories ultimately become colour trends, but they're stories to start with. They're a story of humans living in the built environment. This year, the connecting thread was letting the light in. Last year was kind of, oh my God, the world's going to hell in a handcart, Trump's coming, Boris is doing his thing, the Koreans are doing their thing, everything's going horribly wrong. And last year was about retraction. This year, it's about kind of, we've had enough of retraction. Human beings are actually quite, dominable. We don't like to hide away for a while. We like a bit of a party. So, there's enough of hiding under the duvet. So this year, it's about let the light in. And we're seeing a return to natural colours inspired by nature. And we're seeing a sort of movement towards warm, familiar, neutral. So we've been looking at familiar colours for a while. So from denim drift, that beautiful because of sort of smoky greyed indigo colour, all the way through to heartwood, which was a kind of it was a warm neutral inspired by woods, to spiced honey, which is a golden amber, almost salted caramel colour, which reminds us of wood, of leather, of, in fact, looking at this flap here, all of the units, it's that sort of cosy warmth, familiar warmth. But honey is also energising. So honey can be used to soothe a sore throat, put on hot buttered toast, but it will give you a boost of energy. And that was the colour that we were seeing in design, hugely important colour in design, and on the catwalk, and in materials that were being developed, and in architecture. And we saw this was an important colour in paint as well. And we chose the word, or the name, spiced honey, because it captured this sense of something with a bit of bite, and something that could be soothing and energising at the same time. So that's a shaggy story.
No, that's
a buzzy story.
Yeah, it's exactly when you explained it at the event, I was like, okay, I understand that now, because when you were showing, you had like a PowerPoint sort of thing, and you were showing the different people. It's like, it was really interesting. It's not just people who are in interiors who are linked to paint. It was people who were out in the world, and it was just, and it wasn't even like influential people. It was just people. So you had a really diverse group of people that came together from around the world to come and you just showed us the kind of behind the scenes of when you're talking and finding out these kind of emotions that are coming out and understanding the colour that was coming through.
We find it, we don't tend to talk about colour until our colour experts will interpret what's happening, and we'll take that design knowledge and because our experts will see colours coming through, but we'll take that and try and distill a global narrative, something that we can all share as human beings across the planet. So yeah, it is an extraordinary process. I'm sure that quite a lot of companies do it, but maybe not on the scale that we do it.
No, not on that scale.
No.
With that many people.
But
it's kind of, you might get a press release and it'll say, right, the colour of the year is spiced honey, and then there'll be a sofa and a cushion and all the different interiors products that you get. Obviously, we're talking interiors because it's interior products, but it's interiors website and podcast and everything. But so Colour Futures is I call it a bookazine, like a big catalogue, just about the colour trends for 2019. And what we were shown, I'm going to describe it. So spiced honey, which I'm turning on, I'm going to take some pictures of this and share it, because obviously it's very hard to see colour, even if I described it very well. There's a paint chart in the back of this book, and it showed us that spiced honey, how many colours are in
there
this
are 10
chart?
in each palette, and spiced honey lives in each one.
There are
four palettes.
4 palettes, each given a kind of an emotion, would you say, or like one was love?
Yeah, it has a story. It's
a
what
story.
people want.
Right.
So basically, each of those palettes have something that people want to love, people want to dream, and people want to act. So these are about the sort of it's this new sense of letting the light in. It's being more positive and being proactive. So rather than letting things get on top of you and just being a bit of a sheep and following, we're starting to act like a hive and making stuff happen together collectively. So each of these are human characteristics.
Yes, and actually when you say that, I was thinking that's exactly how this year has started already. I mean, we're recording this on the 11th of January, and there is a sense of that really coming through already. It was kind of, everyone's had a really long break over Christmas, and people are just starting to burst into action now. It's quite interesting. So the colour chart that is at the back of this Futures book is, you've got one big kind of section that is spiced honey, and then each of these 4 moods have 10 colours that go with it.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that there is such a huge diversity of colours in this palette, but they do all work with spiced honey. And I would never have put some of these colours together. I think this is why there's a couple of things. I came away with the bag of love, which I will talk about in a minute, which I was just bowled over by. But the whole, the way all of these colours work with spiced honey, I would never put them together. And I would literally fold the pages back so that I could put like this, there's a pen friend, which is like a really deep, dark blue with the spiced honey. I would never have put that together. Orange and spiced honey, yeah, maybe. But there's a open sky, which is obviously colour of blue sky. Again, the colours I wouldn't put together, but they all work. And grey, putting grey with spiced honey is, I would never have thought of it. And it works in such an interesting way. So and then each row in this colour chart is one of the moods. So I don't know which one's which actually. But
this is probably put down chromatically, but each of the, you're right, spiced honey was designed to work as the queen bee. So just like a hive, you have a queen bee, but she can't live on her own, and the bees can't live on their own either. So they have to work together. So the queen bee is the kind of anchoring colour for each of the trends. And in some trends, she plays a more important role, and in other trends, she just plays a supporting role, kind of like almost a grown-up in there. But the reason why she works so well is because she's a neutral. It's a natural ochre neutral, and it's the colour of wood, and it's the colour of very familiar things. It's the same with the colour of the year last year, heartwood. It was a neutral, more complex than the colour of the year last year. But this one is immediately, it's so usable. It's ridiculously versatile. When people first saw it, they were very polarised about it, thinking, oh my goodness, you've got a brown. But actually, it's a real grower, and designers absolutely love it. Because they get that. They get that you can combine it, and you don't have to just put it with white or an off-white. You can combine it with some incredible colours, and it does work. And throughout this book you've got a lot of fantastic imagery, which again I will share, but when you see it being used in different ways with different elements and getting different feels coming through, it's just very clever. It's very clever. You've turned me into neutrals. I'm a bright colour sort of person, and grey. I still love grey. You can combine the two. As I say, it can go with grey, so it's all good. So why do we have colour trends? What is it? Just to make sure that colour's still current, and because it is such a big thing. Trends are always out there. Everyone always wants to know what the trends are, but why do we have trends? The colour trends. I think trends are a toolbox. They're a toolbox for designers, and for our industry. If we are developing a range of colours, we need to know that we're going to develop the right range of colours that are going to work with other things that are being developed at the same time. So if you know that in the world a new pigment has suddenly been unlocked in a range of plastics, or everybody's using this type of wood, and you know that's happening in architecture, then you'd be an idiot not to understand how that's going to impact on your world. So when you put a trend together, it's a toolbox of usable colours for the design and creative community in order to create beautiful living spaces for that are relevant now and for the future. So I hate the idea that trends are prescriptive. I hate the idea that somebody could possibly imagine that we would go, this is the colour, these are the colours of the year. These are really important colours globally. They tell a story of people globally, a unifying story. And it should be used as a toolbox. And we put so much research into this. They're damn good colours, and they all work really well. So if you use them in your decorating now, they will link to the colours of the year last year and the palettes last year, and they will also link to the colours next. They won't be a flash in the pan. It will be like a thread. There's a thread here. It's not fashion, it's trend. Trend is much more enduring.
Yeah, it's almost like trend is the wrong word, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you showed us the colour of the year that has been like through when it's, I don't know when it started, but you showed us like over 10 years of the colour of the year.
Yeah, we've been doing it for 16 years.
16 years. And then you showed us all the different colours and the palettes, and there was like a chart that you could see the progression, and that it's a very gradual progression, and that it doesn't change very much. It is a very kind of natural progression as it moves on. Yeah.
There were more... It's been very interesting to see how colours have become more... As the world's become slightly more tense... The colours, we're starting to look at colours, enjoy colours that are less saturated. So we're heading for a bit of a party, I reckon, so we probably need a few saturated colours. This year, there are more saturated colours than there have been last year. Last year was all the colours were greyed. I mean, when I say grey, they had an element of grey in them, so they were quite muted. This year, there are some more real zingy colours, which sees that we can see the optimism coming through. But there is a connection. There's a connection. And if there wasn't a connection, then why would you trust me or our company to tell us that this is a colour to decorate in? People decorate every 3 to 5 years. In reality, they probably do it every 10. You know, like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, but that, you know, if you're decorating, it's quite a task. And it needs to last, doesn't it? So you don't want to change it every year or feel like you've made a mistake.
Yeah. You just made me think of something. Do you think, like, Instagram is so huge in interiors? Do you think people are starting to decorate more because they're seeing new colours coming through all the time?
I think so. I think that they're decorating smaller pieces more. I mean, we have a generation that don't own their own homes. I mean, I am at the moment, I'm about to move into a place that which will be my own, but I'm living in a rented house. I've put as much colour into everything I can, but I can't paint the walls because my landlord won't let me. And so we're looking at a generation that was my generation that won't be doing lots of painting. So I think there's lots of inspiration out there, but there must be lots of people who are frustrated because they can't paint their walls. You know, I'd love to start a revolution where landlords would let people paint their walls, and it would. I
think that might be on the change. I keep seeing people. I think if you can get your landlord to let you paint as long as you paint it back again afterwards, then
and we've got paints that cover in one coat. So landlords out there, listen to me. It's fine. Yeah, wake up. It's fine. We've got Magnolia that will cover anything.
Right, I'm going to just talk about the bag of love because otherwise I'll get killed for not sharing it. So when we sat down at the lunch, there was a bag on our chair, and when we opened it up, you said, "Don't open it yet. Wait a minute." So you talked about the colour trends and you talked about the 4 moods, and then you said, "I'm going to focus on one," and you focused on love, and you showed us the imagery and you showed us the palette, and then you said, "Right, now have a look in your bag," and we pulled out one thing at a time. There was like a little like a wooden egg that was painted in spiced honey. There was a little pod of honey, which I've just put in my lemon and ginger tea, which was very good. Thank you for that. But it was just because it was love. There were things in there that were your own personal things, and it was so heartfelt that we were pulling out little people and like a little, I don't know if they were railway people, but just these little models of people, which now sit on my window ledge by my sink now. One's like a sitting lady, so she's sitting with her legs hanging over the edge of the window ledge. And then there was like a bag with like tiny little calico sort of bags that were drawstrings that had feathers in, and then there was wooden beads. But then there was the eggs. And you said that, was it you and your sister collected painted eggs? And we all had your own eggs. And it was just things like that. And it was just such a lovely, it was like you were talking about love and the emotion of it all. And then it was like that you'd shared all of these things. And it was so lovely. I was just really touched by the emotion of it sort of thing. So I called it the bag. I was sitting with Sarah Bird and we were literally sitting there going, "It's a bag of love." And you were telling a story and I shed a tear, I think. So that's what the bag of love was all about. And I didn't open it when I got home. I didn't want to take anything out of it. I was like, no, I want to wait. I'll put. In fact, I've still got there was a green and black little chocolate. I've still got that by my desk. I don't know. It was just such a lovely. It was such a thoughtful way to present a colour. it was brilliant. So thank you for that. I really loved it.
I was so thrilled. I mean, it is sincerely how I feel about colour.
Yes,
I
think that's what it was. We could feel the feel.
What you do as a stylist is you tell stories. You interpret somebody's need, and you tell a beautiful story through everything, through the texture, through the materials, through the furnishings and the accessories. I only have one thing. I have colour, and the colour has to tell a really good story. And this palette of love, one of the things that I enjoyed doing this, because I poured my love into that bag. And one of the stories was the love trend. There is a trend for us to really. We need to reconnect with the people we love. We can't, we might have hundreds and thousands of followers on Instagram, but actually human beings only are really good with about 30 people, and really, really good with about 4.
Yes,
and
that's so true.
And we tend to neglect those 4 people that we should really pour our love into. And so this was, so the story in the bag of love is my sister and I, we are the best friends ever now, but we hated each other when we were young, and we really did. And it was only a few years ago, actually, when we first came to London, that I said, I wanted to kindle something with her. And we both loved to do something. When we were kids, we used to go on a ploughed field, and we used to collect bits of pottery.
Yes.
And so I invited her up. We went mudlarking.
Just as she started off, like, that was the story. Yes, mudlarking.
So we went mudlarking, and we became sisters of the mud, of the Thames, and the things we have found. And the laughs we have had. I mean, we have had so many adventures on the Thames, and we're just best friends. I got to know her by reconnecting with mud and ancient artifacts, storytelling. So we found things, we told stories about them. We've done the most amazing things. She comes up here really regularly. We go down to the Thames, we find stuff, and we just giggle and we laugh. And that was, so I gave you some of the things that we found
some of the
from the Thames
coins.
Yeah. I shared a bit of my inner anorak, and my sister was both a bit anorak-y, and that was great. And so that was love. And from my past, we used to share these eggs. We used to collect these eggs, and so having that as well. And I've got hundreds of them as well. And but I do.
But it was the giving of them. I think it was the feeling behind the emotion, and the.
But surely that's
that you chose to do that. So.
Yeah, and I do that for a living. I want to share my passion for the thing I love with people, and it's so. It's the last thing you do to a room and the first thing you see, paint. It's the thing that costs the least amount. It'd be less than one of these cushions to paint a whole room in a colour that can completely transform it. And it's that I get excited about. And if a colour tells a story, can help somebody tell a story. If a colour can help somebody have a better night's sleep, help them to wind down from a busy day, help their children to feel more excited in a space, help you to, dream, think, love, all of the things. If a colour can really do that, it is my duty to let you know about it in a way that really you can connect with it.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic.
Oh, it was lovely.
So thank you for that.
No, it's a great pleasure.
So what's next then? Have you already started working on the Colour of the Year 2000?
Yes, we have that. So we have that. It's a beautiful story, and I would say that anyway. It's a story that I think people are really going to love and really connect with. It's a really sort of topical story, and we will launch that in September. We might do it a little bit earlier for you guys, so we might kind of like let it out of the bag a little bit earlier this year. But it's a lovely natural progression from where Spiced Honey is, and I can't tell you anything about it. I'm dying to tell you. You have these wonderful things, these lovely sort of secrets, but it's and at the moment the photography is being done, and the book is being curated. Yes. It's all being put together, so that's something exciting that we're working on, and it is a beautiful story. It's quite interesting. It's I think you'd be really surprised by the palette.
So we have to wait 9 months.
Yeah,
about
sadly.
9 months.
Yeah,
okay, watch this space,
before
guys.
this baby gets born. Yeah, but it is lovely. It is lovely, and it's. I remember when we launched Heartwood in this spirit of like the world is a scary place. We're still a scary place, but it was quite. As a retraction story is a difficult story to tell, and although you're telling a story of home, which we were in 2018, it's easier for me to tell a story of optimism.
Yes,
because I think we need to kind of like you buoy yourself up.
Gravity
pulls us down, doesn't it? And kind of like a story of something going horribly wrong is infectious, isn't it? But I think we need to kind of fight against that. And so this optimism is.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to come and chat with you today and understand the trends even better and share it all with everyone. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful. Really lovely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You'll find all the details from today's show over on the website insidestylist.com. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you would go over to iTunes and rate and review it. It's the best way to help other people find the show, and I would really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.